Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. Two candidates for president have stopped through the area over the past 7 or 8 days. First off is Newt Gingrich, who was here a week ago Saturday, and Jon Huntsman, who was here this past Thursday. We're going to hear from both of them in this half hour. We'll start off with former Utah Governor Jon Huntsman. I want to start off by talking to you about the campaign, since the campaign has been making some news here in the past couple days, specifically Herman Cain and the allegations against him. How is this going to change the race, and what do you make of those allegations?
Well, I'm not here to render any kind of judgment. Herman Cain, who's a good man, and I've gotten to know him through the course of the campaign, he's the only one in a position to be able to explain in full what the situation is. And I have every confidence that he will. What it does is it takes some bandwidth out of the presidential discussion so that we're not able to get around to discuss jobs and our position in the world and all of the issues that people in this country want to hear about at this critically important time in our nation's history. So I suspect that Herman Cain, knowing him as the good person that he is, will get through it and do what he needs to do.
And we are going to get to those issues in just a moment. And I want to tell everybody off the bat that this is Thursday morning that we're taping this, so a lot of news may happen between now and Sunday morning when this airs. So if some of this is outdated, I think we can making my apology now. And speaking of today being Thursday, yesterday a Rasmussen poll came out of South Carolina voters. Herman Cain with a 33% lead, followed by Mitt Romney at 23%, Newt Gingrich at 15%. You and Rick Santorum tracking back around less than 1%. I have to ask you how the campaign's going. Are you in this for the long haul? How do you plan on making some inroads and changing that 1% into a bigger number?
Well, and it's a very fair and legitimate question, Tim. Campaigns go through cycles, and right now we're in the early primary cycle. And as soon as we stare down the first vote of the people, which will be the New Hampshire primary, and then of course it will turn here shortly thereafter, an interesting thing will happen, and that is the good citizens of this country will look at the ballot box and they will say, who can actually lead? Who actually has the track record? Who has the ideas and the temperament to bring people together in a way that we all know is possible in this country? And I like our chances in that scenario. We're working hard in New Hampshire. We're connecting with people. We've done 100 events there, town hall meetings and VFW hall visits and house parties. And the next 2 months, Tim, are going to be critically important. We've had these snap polls. We've had straw polls, and they mean very little. At the end of the day, people are going to cast a vote. They haven't had a chance to do that yet. So it is now our responsibility, my responsibility as a candidate, to explain why I am best positioned to win this race against Barack Obama, as the New York Times pointed out today. It is my responsibility to explain why or how this nation can get its manufacturing muscle strengthened again and to begin creating jobs, to recognize the fact that if we don't start taking some basic steps in addressing taxes and regulatory impediments and overall energy independence, we're going to see the end of the American century by 2050. And that's not something that I'm willing to live with, being the father of 7 kids.
I want to get into that now, and I want to talk specifically about the economy and jobs here in South Carolina, particularly this part of South Carolina. We are hit really hard by the recession and with unemployment. Some parts of our viewing area has unemployment rates up around 20%. What is your plan to bring jobs back to America, or bring jobs to America, particularly the rural part of America where we are?
You have to create a level playing field for competition. We don't have that today. So when I became governor of the state of Utah, we were a good state, but we weren't the best economy in the country. And I wanted that state to become the best economy in the country. We fixed taxes. We became the most business-friendly environment in the nation. We reformed, we reformed education. And we took that state to #1 in terms of job creation, the best managed state in America. And I say, it wasn't recreating the wheel. This isn't rocket science. You have to say, why aren't we able to compete as a country? And we're not able to compete as a country because we've lost our confidence. There is less than certainty in the marketplace. Our taxes are a 1955 Chevy driving on the superhighway of the 21st century. We're knee-deep in red tape and regulation, both at the state and the federal level. And I say until such time as we get smart about fixing the underlying structural problems, we're not going to be able to free up the power of this economy. You know, we forget, Tim, that we have the most productive workforce in the world. We're still 25% of the world's GDP. We have enormous firepower in this nation, and people want to unleash it. And right now, we're flat. As a 40-year motorcycle rider, all I can say is it reminds me of being stuck in neutral. You want to kick the motorcycle into first gear and move forward, and we're not able to do that as a country. So I want to do for this nation what I did for the state of Utah, and that is we took it to number one based on fixing the fundamentals that drive an economy. And nationally, that's all about tax reform. It's all about the regulatory environment, repealing Obamacare, repealing Dodd-Frank because they're hindrances today in the marketplace, and taking steps toward energy independence. Those three areas alone would fire the engines of growth in this nation that would expand our base and create jobs, not just in one part of the country, but I believe everywhere. And then, of course, governors have certain tools that they can use. I was a governor and used those tools. But nationally, you have to say, what can the president do? The president can get the impediments out of the way, like Obamacare and like regulation that hinder the flow of capital to small business. The president can approach Congress and say, we've got to fix our taxes, we have no choice. The president can say we're moving toward energy independence, which is 500,000 to 1 million jobs over the next 5 years. If we start converting from natural gas into transportation, into electricity and power, into manufacturing. I mean, we wake up, Tim, to the reality that we have more natural gas in this country than Saudi Arabia has crude oil. And here we have an ongoing heroin-like addiction to imported oil at 60%. And I say, how stupid are we? I mean, when are we going to get with the picture? And that is recognizing that which we have in such abundance. It's affordable, it's accessible, it's better for the air, and it carries important national security implications. So I want to be laser-like and simple in my approach to getting things done, just like I did as governor. You go to the legislature as governor, you go to Congress as president, and you say, I want three things that will revive this economy. I want tax reform, I want regulatory measures that will give predictability and life to this economy, and I want steps toward energy independence. And it's all totally doable. It's the will of the people in this country to get it done.
I want to talk more in depth about taxes and regulation, but just a quick, before we go to commercial, I want to talk about the NLRB real quick and the fight that's going on over Boeing and Charleston, which will have implications on our area. What do you make of that fight, and what do you think should happen?
The NLRB is being politicized, and what they have done here in South Carolina is to make a mockery of the free market system. And when you start playing politics through an independent agency like the NLRB, I say the President of the United States needs to simply say, stand down. This is not good. Why is it not good for the country? It doesn't matter whether you're in an open shop state, a right-to-work state, a closed shop state. This is bad all the way around. If, you know, I'm a governor of a non-right-to-work state, and I'm trying to bring a business in who sees what's playing out in South Carolina, they're going to say, I don't want to be in your state. I'm going to go to a right-to-work state. And if the implications in a right-to-work state like South Carolina are such that they are with Boeing, your choice then is to go offshore, which is terrible for everybody in this country. So I say we've got to get to the root of the problem. The president needs to stand up, and he needs to say, NLRB, we're not going to politicize this issue. This economy cannot afford politicizing the kinds of issues that throw into jeopardy this recent expansion for the 787 that has created thousands of jobs for this state. And it, you know, if we don't stop it now, it has implications elsewhere.
Thank you, Governor. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's get more into taxes and regulation.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. My guest is former Governor of Utah, Jon Huntsman, former ambassador to China, and we've been talking about the economy, taxes, and regulation. And I want to go into what your plan would be for taxes. We've heard of the 999 plan from Herman Cain, the postcard-size plan from Rick Perry. Yours, I understand, for individuals would be a choice of an 8%, 14%, or 23% flat tax rate if you'd like it.
Right.
How does that work, and how would that? Who would choose 23%?
Well, and first of all, let me say that I come to this discussion as a practitioner, not as someone who's espousing unknown theories. I'm up against others in the race who are putting forward ideas that just aren't going to work. 999 would never get a hearing in Congress, I do believe. And Rick Perry, my good friend, has put forward a flat tax, but it's an optional flat tax. So you can still game the existing system with all the loopholes, and that doesn't get us to where we need to be. So as governor, I created a flat tax. You know, I'm the only one of the race who's actually done anything like that. And I saw the flat tax bring the state to life economically. And so I look nationally at what we have to do, and I say, job number one is we've got to get something through Congress. Whatever you do has to live in the real world. It can't be a pie-in-the-sky thing that gets a cheer or applause line at a debate. It's got to live in the real world. And I say we can take our tax code, and we can say phase out on the individual income side all of the loopholes and the deductions in total. Now, this is what I did en route to a flat tax in Utah. I didn't get all of them out at the end of the day, but my going-in position was I want to sweep it clean of all the cobwebs, and I want to raise the revenue that then provides and reinvest it into the tax code, thereby lowering the rate, broadening the base, and allowing you to simplify. I prove the point in our state. So nationally, I want to do the same thing. I want to phase out the loopholes and deductions, raise the revenue, reinvest it in the code, and lower the three rates based upon your income, 8, 14, and 23. And I know some say, you're going to phase out this deduction or that. And I say, we're putting too much emphasis as a country on debt. We're incentivizing debt, and that long term, we see where it gets us. And I say, I think people would much prefer a lower rate as opposed to having deductions here and there. So on the business side, I'm saying a whole lot of businesses can afford lobbyists and lawyers on Capitol Hill to do their bidding, and they're finding ways to get out from paying 35%. Let's face reality. It is what it is. I want to phase out the corporate welfare. We can't afford it anymore. And I want to phase out subsidies, of which we've got $90 billion worth in this country. And I say you phase it out, you raise the revenue, you can buy down the rate from 35% to 25% in a revenue-neutral fashion. It will leave businesses with a level playing field for the first time in a long while, make us more competitive internationally, because it's been since 1986 that we fixed our taxes under President Reagan. That's the last time we addressed tax reform in this country. So what I am proposing builds on the Reagan tax reform of 1986 in a realistic, doable way.
Over the coming weeks, you'll see more of my interview with Jon Huntsman here on Carolina This Week. Now I wanted to switch over to Newt Gingrich, who was here a week ago Saturday. Here's more of my interview with him. A lot of demand out there from a lot of people just to abolish the EPA altogether. What would you do with the EPA? I know a lot of business people just say it just gets in the way and it prevents us from doing our job.
Well, let me say, first of all, I did teach environmental studies. I taught in the Second Earth Day. I love the environment. I think it's very important. Here along the coast, certainly people know the environment's a big deal. And just quality of life. You know, when I was teaching back in the early 70s, the Cuyahoga River in downtown Cleveland caught fire. There was so much chemical pollution. Now, I say to my hardest core conservative friends, you really can't justify a river catching fire. I mean, you know, there is a good reason for some environmental reinforcement, and I think we ought to do some things for the environment. Having said that, the EPA has selected out bureaucrats who are anti-business, anti-jobs, anti-common sense. And I think we should replace the current EPA with a brand new agency, which I would call an environmental solutions agency. You should have to have common sense to be hired by it, and I'll explain that in a second. You should have to have an attitude of innovation and trying to find new, better ways to solve things. You should have to have a collaborative attitude that wants to collaborate with local communities, collaborate with states, collaborate with businesses, not just run over them and sue them. Now, let me, if I might, give you one example that is not directly relevant to Myrtle Beach, but it's very relevant to the country. Somebody at EPA has gotten in their head that dust is bad. And so I've been in Iowa recently where Senator Chuck Grassley has been all over this, and I've been in Arizona where it's even funnier. In Iowa, imagine you're a farmer. You have a pickup truck. You're driving down a dirt road. You're kicking up dust behind you. You have your field on the right, your neighbor's field's on the left. The EPA now wants to have a rule that basically says, because you only plow on a dry day. Okay, so when you plow, you get dust. They want to say if the wind is strong enough that the dust will leave your field and go to your neighbor's field, you shouldn't plow. Now, I mean, the farmers I talk to in Iowa think this is crazy. They think, who thought this up? So I went to Arizona, and I raised this question with a group of ranchers. And they said, it's really hard to get across to EPA. Arizona's a desert. Now, as a desert, it's really dry. And when you're really dry, you get dust. And they have natural dust storms. And recently the EPA said to them, maybe you should water down the dirt so you don't get the dust. And they said, we've been trying to explain to them, this is a desert because there's no water. And we're told to be very careful with water because it's very scarce. And you're now telling us we should take our scarce water to put it on dirt in order for the dirt not to become dusty, even though that's the natural state of a desert. And I have this image in my head. I'm actually going to go try to find out who did this. I have this image of somebody who lives in a high-rise condominium with air conditioning, who goes in a air-conditioned subway to their high-rise office in downtown Washington to sit in an air-conditioned room with no windows, to imagine dust. And you think about it, this is so goofy, it's hard to believe your government's doing it.
I want to take a quick break. We have a lot more to talk about and not much more time to do it in. We'll be right back with former Speaker Newt Gingrich, current 2012 GOP presidential contender. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Lucky to have my guest this morning being former Speaker Newt Gingrich, current 2012 GOP contender. Let's talk a little bit about the race now for president. The debates have been, as a watcher, been fun to watch. Being a part of them, I don't know if I'd want to be up on that stage or not. What's it been like? What do you think it's going to take for you to really rise above your competitors, some of whom are tracking, in double digits ahead of you?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got a great number of people running. They're terrific people. I like Herman Cain a great deal. We've known each other a long time. I like Rick Santorum. We go back and serve together in the Congress. I served with Ron Paul. I think that Michelle Bachmann is terrific, and her husband actually comes from like 9 miles from my wife's home, so there's some ties there. I've known Mitt Romney since 1994 when he ran for the U.S. Senate. So you look at all these folks, and Governor Perry, I wrote the foreword to one of his books. So, I mean, I think Rick's a terrific guy. So I think the most pleasant surprise to me has been it's really a debate among friends. I don't think any of us are. We all understand the common opponent is Barack Obama. It's not each other. The biggest surprise to me has been the amount of bickering, which I think has actually been harmful to the candidates who did it. If you watch their polling numbers, they have not profited by doing this. The second biggest surprise, I think, was the rise of Herman Cain, who just had a terrific run so far. Whether he can sustain it, we'll find out in the next few weeks. I'm proud for him. I think it's something he should feel really good about. I think there are certain problems with the 999 plan that he's going to have to really answer, and if he can answer them, he may well be the nominee. If he can't answer them, then he won't be the nominee. It's that straightforward.
Herman Cain came here not too long before he took a big bump. You're here now. I read an article just last night that says December could belong to you.
Well, I think the model for our campaign is the tortoise. We go forward one step at a time, but we don't sleep. We're not like the bunny rabbits. And so we're gradually gaining ground. And I had always hoped to be fully competitive by early December. We have raised more money in October than we raised in July, August, and September combined. And we are in a pretty good position now, I think, to be fully competitive. We're opening up offices here in South Carolina right now as we're talking. And I think you're going to see us be very, very visible and very competitive in the campaign.
As a service to the people who are trying to make up their minds who to vote for, that may have been watching the headlines that came out, and I have to bring up Tiffany's.
Sure.
That's something that may concern people, saying we have a fiscal conservative here who had $1 million revolving account.
But it was a revolving account. I never owed any interest, and we always paid it off. I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. And we are, for all practical purposes, totally debt-free. Our house is paid for, our cars are paid for. We have lived a life of trying to be really disciplined about what we do. But when we have an opportunity, and people see this with cars all the time, buy the car interest-free for the next, first year or something. I like taking advantage of not having to pay, of somebody else paying the interest if I can do it. But I do believe, again, if you look at my track record, I mean, it's pretty silly, it seems to me, to attack the only person in your lifetime who created 4 straight federal balanced budgets as not being able to balance the budget. I mean, so when I have somebody who's never done it begin to say, gee, I'm not sure if Newt can do it. Well, it's a historic fact. We did it. We paid off $405 billion in debt. And people have my commitment that as Speaker, I did it, and as President, I'll do it again. And this time, instead of having to negotiate with a liberal Democrat in the White House, you'll have a conservative Republican, and I think we can do it very dramatically.
Whoever wins the nomination is going to have to take the ball up the middle.
Exactly.
Are you able to take the ball up the middle? There are a lot of people out there. Granted, you were able to work with a liberal Democrat in the White House back then, but will you be able to convince somebody who may have voted for Barack Obama in 2008, maybe somebody who voted for John Kerry in 2004, that they should vote Gingrich in 2012?
Well, the central theme of our campaign is going to be food stamps versus paychecks. Barack Obama is the best food stamp president in American history. More people are on food stamps today than ever before. And I'm going to be very direct with people. You know, if you want your children's future to be food stamps and dependency, you ought to vote for Obama. If you want your children's future to be paychecks, opportunity, independence, then you ought to vote for Gingrich. And I think you're going to find the country overwhelmingly prefers the opportunity to have a job and earn a paycheck rather than to be dependent on the government and have politicians give them food stamps. So I think the issues next year are going to lead many, many Americans who might have once voted for Obama. I mean, college students who thought he was going to be great and now they can't find a job. But also people who thought he was going to be bipartisan, people who thought he was going to work in a transparent way. You know, when you realize the opportunities just to create American energy, overwhelmingly, almost 80% of the country would like us to have an American energy plan. The president's opposed to it. Well, you take a series of 80% issues. At some point, you've got a pretty big middle there in that 80%. And the Gingrich campaign will be focused on raising issues that bring together most Americans.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for stopping by today.
It's fun to be with you.
I imagine we'll see you back here in January for the debate.
I'll be here.
All right. We'll be right back. And that's going to do it this morning. Hope to see you back here next Sunday morning at 9 for more Carolina This Week.